My name is Russell Stein. I'm the interim director of Gallaudet Innovation and Entrepreneurship Institute. And hello, my name is Tiffany Rufa. I'm a light-skinned Latina with brown curly hair, black long sleeve shirt with a zipper and a white background. Hello, everyone. And I'm also part of GIEI, Gallaudet Innovation and Entrepreneurship Institute. Hello and welcome, everyone. This is Russ. Hello. I am talking about the art of including deaf people. I'm thrilled to be with you for the next hour and a half. We're going to have Q&A at the very end, and we'll also have an opportunity for some questions soon as well. If you have burning questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat. Can you back up on the slides? Okay. So today's topic, before I go ahead and read this slide, please. So we may have some follow-up questions from the previous two trainings. And then we're going to cover the do's and don'ts for Zoom or virtual meetings, as well as in-person meetings when working with deaf people. And then we'll have Q&A at the end. So this should be a very exciting workshop. Tiffany, take it away. Hello, everyone. I'm going to recap the first two meetings we had. You may or may not have watched the first and second training. This is the third. We covered a lot of information in the first two webinars to help you understand why you should have a deaf train the trainer experience for our deaf audience. We have a lot of in-depth history. We shared a lot of in-depth history with deaf culture, working with deaf people, and we could not do that in simply one training. Number one, I encourage you all to watch the first and second webinars, and you can find them online. The first one was in August 31st, Deafhood and You, Your Power and the Deaf Community. And the second one was January 25th, and that's about language translation. And I encourage you all to watch these webinars. The first and second one was about, we look back to Martha's Vineyard. And we had a special, everyone was signing there in Martha's Vineyard. We talked about Vediz. We have a video of him signing from the 1800s. And he said, as long as we have deaf people, we will have sign language, a very powerful video. We also talked about schools for the deaf. Or when you go to school, you learn English, the grammar and the structure, but we did not have that opportunity in American Sign Language. And we also talked about using the Golden Gate Bridge as a metaphor, a two-way highway. So we asked people which they would prefer, the Golden Gate Bridge to travel on or a rope bridge. If you have a strong bridge with communication, that is effective communication, as opposed to a rope bridge that is shaky and you only can go one at a time. The Golden Gate Bridge is preferred by all. This is Russ. Thank you so much for that recap. If you all have questions before we begin our workshop today about our previous presentations, feel free to either type them in the chat or you can raise your hand. We will spotlight you, and you can ask your question in that way. Are there any questions out there with Deafhood training part 1 or part 2? Someone asked in the chat, where is Deafhood training part 1? And I believe Ruth or Caroline will provide links to those 2 trainings. Is that right?
Yes, we have put the part 2 in, and we are trying to find part 1. That was some time ago, so we need to check an early calendar, but we will find it. And if not today, it will be sent out with the after the webinar. So you'll definitely get that link.
And Tiffany is saying that was August 31st, to let you know, Caroline. The part 1. Any other questions out there about part 1 or part 2?
Only that people are very glad to be back and are very excited to hear what you have to say for part 3.
All right, well then let's move on. This is Tiffany. Okay, remember at the end we'll have Q&A opportunity, and feel free to type them in the chat meanwhile. So what we're going to talk about today is the do's and the don'ts. What do you want to do? Before we talk about that, I would like to share a few interesting things about this book I have up on screen. This was based in Finland, or in Finland, for example, they require children to learn multiple languages. That's every child must know at least 3 languages in the country of Finland by the time they graduate high school. That's the norm. In the US, we only have 1 required and, you know, a little bit of a second language. That's a huge benefit there in Finland knowing multiple language. They can adapt. The cognitive development is increased. There's tremendous benefit from learning several languages. By the time a person from Finland is 11, they can learn a lot of different. They have a lot of different benefits. I encourage you to take a look at this book. So in the second Deafhood training, we talked a little bit about the magic macaroni and cheese syndrome. If you have not watched this one, I'll briefly explain what this means. This has to do with a deaf child playing in the living room. The parent may come and say, hey, do you want macaroni and cheese? And the child says, yes. And so they expect it, the bowl to be ready. But if they're asked to wait before the parent makes the macaroni and cheese, it is explained to them that the deaf child in the living room while they're playing does not realize the parent has already made the macaroni and cheese, and that's why it's quote unquote magically available. So the other option is to have the parent come to the child and say, hey, do you want to make macaroni and cheese together? Because it doesn't magically appear. Let me show you how we make this macaroni and cheese. So this is similar to train the trainer. If a deaf person learns about a training and can provide that training to the deaf person will know how to fill in all of the blanks to make sure the deaf person completely understands the training and everything that happens behind it. This is Russ adding, if you did not attend the first training, I'd like to share a story about incidental learning. I went to a coffee shop with my child. She's a CODA, child of a deaf adult, just like the interpreter we have today. So my daughter and I are waiting in line to get our breakfast. I paid for breakfast, and then we sit in the car, and my daughter says, Dad, wow, my gosh, these people in the corner were just talking about a store down the street that's going to close. And she explained what she learned in line. I was shocked. I'm a deaf person. I've been deaf all of my life. It's amazing that you can get information from every corner of the store. So again, just like the magic macaroni, what I learned, there's a wealth of information while you're standing in public. You know, when I'm standing in line, I just thought, oh, I'm waiting for my food. But now I look around about all the information that people are gaining while they're standing in line, and honestly, that I'm missing. Deaf people miss a lot of what's called incidental learning. I don't have access to the information that's happening all around me, where just like hearing people can learn. For example, in Los Angeles, if you hear helicopters, my son might say, whoa, there's a lot of helicopters around. I don't hear the helicopters. I don't know what's going on until I go up to my roof and I see it circling around. I'd like to add to what Russ is saying, Tiffany's, but we're going to switch interpreters.
This is Tiffany speaking. Okay, checking in with the interpreter, making sure they see me. Russ, that coffee shop story would be different if everyone in the coffee shop was deaf. Then it'd be a different story. It'd be visual. As a deaf person using sign language, you'd be able to walk in and see the conversations happening across the room. You'd see somebody talking about that shop around the corner closing down, and so on and so on. This is Russ speaking. That's why when you see deaf people get together in a group, it's amazing because it's difficult to break them apart. For example, just last night, I went to a restaurant and we were all business owners, 5 of us, 5 deaf business owners. We were together at a restaurant. And of course, you know, restaurants don't like it when people linger. We were there over 5 hours and a half. Why were we there so long? Because we finally had access to information with each other. And it's kind of like a dose of IV, right? We've got that information coming into us and we're pumped up, we're excited because we don't have experiences like this on a daily basis. So hopefully that ties it into today. Thank you so much. Tiffany says, yeah, I agree with you, Russ. Thank you for pointing that out. Tiffany speaking, a mouse in a maze. We aren't mice, but this is a good example of inconsistency not being great for all of us. We know that NDI and the community here has been fantastic with us. They provide accommodations, they ask questions. We cannot applaud NDI anymore. However, with that said, we do experience inconsistencies from time to time. A lot of improvements have been made, but I'll give you an example. Let's say, for example, you have a mouse in a maze. And there's a lever in the maze that dispenses food. And the mouse will know on a consistent basis, if they press the lever, they will get food. That's considered consistency. Now let's say the same mouse is placed in a different maze, makes it to the end of the maze, and the mouse has the expectation that when they press the lever, they will be fed. Maybe they press the lever 3 times. Maybe they press it 6 times. Maybe they have to press it a certain number of times. And the mouse keeps trying to press it to be fed. And when the feeding doesn't occur, then there's mistrust there. There's an unreliability to the lever or the system overall. Frustration develops because of that. Now let's take another scenario, a third scenario. Same thing, same mouse in a new maze. Once that mouse makes it to the end of the maze and finds a lever and tries to activate the lever for feeding and nothing happens and does 3 presses, 4 presses, whatever number of presses, and realizes that there's no food, then that trust is definitely broken at that point. So I'd like to ask, what type of access do your companies provide? Is your company one that provides consistent, reliable access? Or is it inconsistent where you try, you hit, you miss? Or is it not consistent at all where you're not even trying? You don't have to respond publicly, but that question is intended to get you to think about the deaf experience. A deaf consumer coming in and needing communication, we're going to want that to be consistent. This is Russ speaking. I'd like to add to what you just said, Tiffany. You're completely right. A lot of times we don't even realize if things aren't consistent and available to us as a community to go, right? If we have that consistency and we know that the information is there all the time, that's one thing. But if it's not, we get frustrated, we get angry, there's a loss of trust, we're disappointed. Basically, our stomachs are turned upside down because of the desperation, right? What do? I can continue all day. But if something's not reliable and it's doubtful, then we're not going to go. We're not going to use the resource. Versus if we know that something is available and accessible, we're going to show up because we know it's there and reliable. With that, we'll move forward. And please feel comfortable to respond in the chat. Who are the American Sign Language interpreters here today? Who are they really for? Answer me in the chat, please. Today in this experience, who are the sign language interpreters really here for? And I'll be glued to the chat. I see a response there for the audience. Okay, that works. That's fine. Okay, the answer is coming up next. Next slide, please. Next slide, if we can move the slide forward. And Tiffany says, oh, the chat's blowing up for hearing people, for the audience, for everyone. This is Russ. The answer is on the next slide. Please, next slide. This is Russ speaking. The truth here is that most of the time, hearing people think interpreters are in the situation for the benefit of the deaf person. But you've got to change your mindset. The interpreters are here for yourselves. We're here to communicate with each other. Of course, the interpreters benefit everyone. And I'm not going to draw this out, but the interpreters aren't the only solution. There is a whole host of solutions. Again, each interpreter has different skill sets. Each interpreter has different backgrounds. There's a lot of differences between interpreters. There's a lot to think about. I won't get too in depth in that, but it's important to understand that when you make a request for a sign language interpreter, don't think to yourself, I'm asking for the interpreter for this deaf person. No, you're asking for the interpreter for us. You're not here to help deaf individuals. You're here to ensure that everyone has access to communication.
This is Tiffany. Totally agree.
This is Russ speaking. Okay, at this point, we're moving on to what's next. Let's get into the nuts and bolts of things. We are going to be talking about virtual meeting tips. And before we dive in, I know that everyone here, all of you, probably don't use your vision like deaf people. So you've got to think visually. So for any video conference platform, Zoom, Blue Jeans, all the different companies, I want to give you a caveat, a warning. Zoom is still far ahead of any other platform in terms of the deaf community. And I'm talking about video quality. We can see how sharp, how clean we are. There's no blurriness in any screen. Can you imagine sitting on a monitor that's blurry for 8 hours? Remember, we take in communication through our eyes all day. Hearing people take in communication through your ears. There's a different mode there on how we take communication in. So when you set up any virtual meeting, please defer to and use Zoom. It's already been proven as a platform, right? Is Zoom the best platform that exists? No, that's not what I'm saying, but it is far ahead and far beyond, much better than any other platform that is currently in use. With that said, let's move forward.
This is Tiffany. I'd like to add that deaf people have been used to virtual experiences.
Thank you, Tiffany, for saying that. What's interesting about Zoom, and I think a lot of people here are probably learned about Zoom right after the pandemic. I'm pretty sure everyone had that experience. We were all kind of awkward with it at the beginning, right? The funny thing is that within the deaf community had been using video technology since 1999. So I, myself, am one of 4 individuals who set up a national-wide video relay service for the deaf community. So I've been accessing video conferences for years and years and years. And I remember just before the pandemic, I was in Zoom and there were people, hearing people having struggles because the technology is so different. And what's funny is after the pandemic, it seemed like everyone knew how to use Zoom because we were so reliant on it. Our lives depended on it. Every meeting, every doctor's appointment, every interaction we had was through Zoom. The whole world changed in a blink of an eye. And so with this information we're sharing here are the do's, what you should do when it comes to virtual meetings. Okay, so now take a look at me. You see my heart first, and no, I'm sorry. I shouldn't do that to you. Why don't you look at the slide and read through that first?
Russ, can we please read the slide? Because not everybody is able to do that for themselves, if you wouldn't mind. Out loud, to have the interpreters do that. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'll ask the interpreter. Well, no, I'll go ahead and go through each, says Russ. Virtual meetings, do's. First, if you're looking up at the screen, see my heart. Show my heart. It's really here in the center of my body. What I'm saying by that, or what we mean by show your heart, is the framing. You want to center your heart in the frame of the video screen. A lot of people don't realize, even if they're hearing, that all we see is their head. And for me, we rely on body language. Body language gives us additional language cues and facial expression that goes along with it. When we just see a head, we're not getting that communication. So I ask, please be mindful to show your heart. That makes it easy for you, right? If I twist and move, this is easy to see. You see my shoulders turning, I'm leaning in, leaning out. We can see that behavior, which tells us what things are going on. It's very similar to when hearing people hear tone changes. Like, for example, if you're talking on the keyboard, I can tell that you're typing because I see it, not if I see your head, but if I see it and I can see your whole body, I know that maybe you're sending a message in the chat, or maybe you're sending someone an email, or I can ask myself, wait, am I a nobody to this person? Are they ignoring me? And so on and so on. So there's communication inherent to what we see. So show your heart. That's what we mean by that. Center yourself in the frame. Number 2 on the slide is pause between slides. Each time you show a new slide, pause, wait, ask whether they're hearing or deaf, whoever your audience is, ask them to read through the information, give them a couple seconds to digest it before continuing with the message. Okay, and just to share with you, I have 2 monitors. I have one to my right and one right in front of me. So there's a lot to look at. If there were no pause and people were just talking, would I be able to split my attention from my eyes? I only have 2 eyes and I can't make them aim in different directions. I've got to keep them pointed at the same place. And that's a big difference between deaf people and hearing people. Hearing people can look up at the ceiling and you're still following what I'm saying. Deaf people like myself, we have to look at what we are quote unquote hearing. So having that visibility and access to what's happening around us allows us to have that incidental learning. Now, of course, when we are talking about deafblind individuals, there are completely different needs that must be addressed. What I'm talking about is just in general for deaf sign language users. The next bullet point, the 3rd one on the slide, is highlight the agenda topic. Many folks, when they present, will have an agenda and it will be on the share screen. And most people share their agenda that way. A lot of times you have to keep in mind, we can't look at 2 different things at the same time. Either we're looking at the interpreter or we're looking at the agenda because they are 2 separate things. So for us to know which topic you're talking about, as I've done here in this slide, we've highlighted highlight agenda topic. That is a visual indicator to you which agenda item we're on. That is a big help to a deaf attendee because then we can look over at the slides and return our gaze to the interpreter. And we're like mice. We are clicking on that lever because we want to be fed all the time, right? We are receiving nutrition via communication. We are clicking the lever. And if we get frustrated after clicking the lever so many times, we'll leave. You might realize that people leave webinars and for some, whatever reason it is, they're getting frustrated and they're not getting that nutrition that they need. Okay, let's move on to the next bullet point. That 4th one there says, keep slides simple. And in parentheses, less words. If possible, use images. Pictures are great. And use fewer words, not more text. the reason I say this is because if it's text dense, it's difficult for deaf individuals to look over, take in all that text, digest it, and then pay attention. Where if you have simple highlight words or salient words, then it's a lot easier to look at and understand that information. Number 5 on the slide is wait to be spotlighted before you speak. And this is irregardless of hearing status, whether deaf or hearing. Zoom does have a feature called the raise hand feature that can be used to identify the next speaker. And then the spotlight feature can be used to spotlight the person. That's when someone should speak. Now, usually the way it works, and I understand this is because this is an audio-centric world, sometimes a person is told they're up and they just start speaking and they don't get the spotlight. So any deaf attendees to your Zoom meeting or video conference would not know who's speaking until they come on the screen. For example, we have the interpreter actively working right now. They're voicing for me. They're telling you what I'm saying in sign language. So imagine, let's not imagine, we have 98 people in attendance online right now. If someone else starts talking, I would have no idea what they look like. I would have no idea what they sound like. I wouldn't have any information. I would have to look at the interpreter, and one of the interpreters would try to talk for 98 different people if they all spoke at the same time. So I would be hearing or seeing 98 different people through one interpreter. You hear different voices, and you know that's Bob's voice, that's Jane's voice, that's so-and-so's voice. I am only looking at one person, the interpreter, and the interpreter is telling me who's speaking. So if the hearing person is not spotlit, then I have no idea who's talking. All I see is an interpreter. What I have to do is I go to the Zoom participants list, or I'll use gallery view, and I'll scan the gallery to see if I see any lips moving. And if I do see lips moving, I think, okay, that's the person speaking, and they might be on mute and talking to someone else in the room with them. So it's very important to spotlight the speaker. And the last bullet point on there, we're almost done with the slide. The last bullet point says, set correct speaker view and spotlight for recording. I mentioned Zoom is great for video quality, but there's a difference between live and the recordings. There are two different functions in Zoom. And a lot of times it's overlooked that the recording isn't recorded appropriately. I'll give you a true scenario that happened. This happened a couple months ago. I had a huge conference, and it was an amazing conference, by the way. I was part of a panel, and of course we had 2 interpreters, just like this, just like we're having today. And the settings for the recording weren't set up correctly. So after the event, we were showing the video recording. Nobody saw me at all the entire time. The recording focused on the sound of the speaker. And so they could see the interpreters' faces while I was sharing my message. So anyone watching the recording is thinking that the message is coming from the interpreters, but the message was coming from me. I was the speaker. So with that said, be careful about the settings. Make sure you've got them set correctly so that your recording shows correctly. Next, Tiffany.
This is Tiffany. You're right, Russ. One person mentioned in the chat, there may be blind people here today, and it's important for them to hear the audio part. So this is a win-win for hearing people who are blind and they're attending this conference, as well as deaf people. We give people time to read, we read the agenda, and we'll make sure that we include all people. So thank you so much for sharing that.
This is Russ speaking. I'd like to add something else that's also important. For a hearing blind person versus a deaf blind person, completely different individuals. When you have a deaf blind person, you need to secure a certified deaf interpreter. Remember a second ago, I asked you to read the slides? The interpreter can read those out and voice them, but for a deaf blind attendee, they would have that interpreter inform them what's on the slide before the speaker even started presenting or speaking. And if they don't do that, then the deaf attendee might not be able to catch what the presenter is saying and what's on the slide. So for that type of individual, there is more of a lag time. Tiffany and I are not experts in deaf blind, but we do have some awareness and we do support the community. Gallaudet has one of the most diverse, most inclusive support systems and student body. So we're ahead of the game. We understand what it's like. Is it perfect? No, there is further to go. But if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to us. GIEI is happy to share information and resources.
Thank you, Russ. So he covered some of the do's. I'll cover some of the don'ts. Now, I'm guilty of this myself, but during a conference or a training, we ask you to watch the training all the way rather than multitasking. So like I said, I'm going to have you, or as mentioned before, I should have you read this slide, and then I will sign what's on it. So the first line is about multitasking on screen. It is incredibly distracting. So that means you're typing, or you go on mute and you're talking to someone or eating, and I'm guilty of all of this. But for deaf presenters or deaf attendees, we may look to the video panel of somebody moving. It's very distracting, and then we'll actually miss what the presenter is saying. So in general, for a conference like this, you should only have a spotlight on the deaf person and the interpreter. But since the hearing audience would like to see the interpreters, we're spotlighting both of them. But if somebody on screen is also multitasking, it's very distracting. We will look away from the presenter. So that this is something that's really important when you have deaf people engaged in a virtual meeting. Now, if you use a lot of abbreviations or acronyms, Russ mentioned incidental learning. The hearing population will hear so many acronyms, DOL, SDS, and if you just go ahead and run through all these acronyms, what is DOL? What is SDS? We're already behind many people, and now we're behind in the meeting because we're trying to figure out what DOL means, or we're looking it up on Google. So we like to connect to the speaker. We are here because we care, and we crave this information. We'd like to know what DOL means. So please take time to explain what it means. You can put it in the chat. And then once you explain what DOL means, then you can use that acronym the whole time, and we are with you. Now, it's important to remember there is a lag time with interpreters. Deaf people are really good at, when they're speaking, they'll watch the interpreters to make sure the interpreters are finished with the interpretation. So they're part of our team. And if the interpreter gets very far behind, that will be missed information by your deaf audience. Also remember lag time between speakers, so the interpreter can complete the interpretation. You can spotlight the next speaker. It just takes 2 or 3 seconds. And I know that Americans do not like pauses. If you caught the first 2 presentations, I believe the second training, our presenter was Marvin Miller. And he learned that there was music everywhere, in elevators, restaurants, while shopping. And he wonders, do you have to have music while you're eating food? That's because of a discomfort that the hearing population has with silence. So we encourage you to sort of embrace that, understand that, and provide 2 or 3 seconds of pause between speakers.
Let me jump in here, Tiffany. This is Russ speaking. I'd like to add something. All of you, look at the interpreter, the male interpreter. You can see the male interpreter working today. I'm signing and he hasn't stopped talking, right? I'm constantly going. And when I do stop, I want you to see when it is that the interpreter stops after me. Did you see that lag after I stopped signing till the time that the interpreter stopped speaking? It's the same in reverse. A hearing person is speaking. Of course, the interpreter has to hear them and start interpreting their message, and they're right behind them. They're not with them, they're right behind them. And people forget to think about this. It takes 2 to 4 seconds lag time between that communication. And then the interpreter has to take a deep breath and move on to the next person, right? We'll give you a live example now.
So the next line says, fill the slide with tons of text. Do not do that. Maybe a handout is better. Maybe abbreviate it, have a bullet point, and then you can go into detail, sharing a transcript or sharing a handout. If you need to put a lot of information on text, on slides, then you have to give a lot of time for people to read it. If you don't want to give a good 30 seconds for people to read the slide, then you have to make it more simple in order to make it accessible to deaf people as well as deafblind people. So the second to last bullet point talks about blurring your background, and Russ is giving you an example of that.
This is Russ. Hello. Hello. I want to let you know I do have a plain, simple background. If I had a visually noisy background, it would be difficult to see my hands. Like when they leave my body, the silhouette of my body, right? I could sign within the silhouette of my body, or I could sign beyond it. So sometimes folks don't realize that blurriness on the hands makes it difficult for a deaf conference attendee to watch, because we have to basically sharpen our vision into the silhouette area and try to ignore what's outside of that. And I do know that that can cause seizures in people. Some people can't really handle doing that. So just a caveat for the audience.
This is Tiffany. That's right. There's a lot of work for one. There might be a lot of work for one person to figure out if they blur their background. If you have a light source behind you, please try to remove that. I know that hearing people are based on audio. So if there's a shadow, if there's a light in your background, or if you have a blurry background, for people who rely on visual, it's very difficult. Your face may have shadows. Your facial expressions are hard to recognize. That will make us work a lot harder. So I have a light source in front of me. You can see how clear I am. There's a little bit of shadow because of my hair, but it's not because there's a light behind me. So it's lighting is very important. If you have a window, have it be in front, not to the side or behind. So once you've finished talking, sometimes people close a webinar at the very end before the captioning is finished. So it's important to recognize that interpretation and the captioning is complete before you end your webinar. This is Russ. Now we'll have some in-person tips. This is different from virtual. Tiffany's saying, isn't there a movie to show? This is Russ. Yes, thank you. So if you meet with a deaf client or a deaf person, I'm talking a small group, maybe 1 or 2 people, you should always ask the deaf person if they have a preferred interpreter. They may have a preferred gender or a preferred race or a preferred skill set. Ask them. Don't just try to find the right interpreter. You will make a lot of assumptions. If the deaf person, often they know what they want. They know who they want. Now, if it's a large group, that's a different situation. You can't ask 10 deaf people about their preferred interpreter, but you do want to pick the right interpreter for that topic, for that skill. We have some interpreters who are very skilled in medical or legal, but there's not a large group of interpreting communities that understand business relations. So, and that can cause misunderstandings in the interpretation. So we can't ever hold the interpreter 100% accountable. They're there to relay information. So it's up to the deaf person and the hearing person to make sure we understand each other. So if the term seems a little bit off, that's a time to connect and ask questions. Okay, this is Tiffany continuing. What if you have an in-person meeting? The approach will be very different from a virtual meeting. In virtual, you're worried about a video panel and lighting and pausing between speakers. But in person, your approach is different. Is the room large? Is it a small conference room? Are you sitting in a circle? Is it, are you sitting in different rows? There are so many different variables. So it's important to ask the deaf person, where would you like to sit? So please read this slide first, and then I will cover each point. So the first bullet point, you can ask the deaf person, where would they like to sit? Russ may prefer to sit in the front, or maybe not. I like to sit in front sometimes, or sometimes I'll sit in the back for my own personal reasons. I don't like it to be determined for me where I sit. People will accommodate for their own personal needs. If you want to accommodate each person, you can do that in a small group, but if it's a large group, then you'll have to allow for more flexibility. So the interpreter may stand just a bit behind the hearing person. They're almost shoulder to shoulder. And the reason we have this setup is the deaf person can easily look between the hearing speaker and the interpreter in order to connect to the hearing speaker. I'm here to connect with that speaker and their content. So if the interpreter is close to the speaker, then I can connect with them and understand the content. So if we can, we try to set up a straight line of sight between the presenter and where the deaf person is seated. Often there will be seats reserved for deaf people off to the side. And so we literally have to turn our head between the speaker and the interpreter. That is not ideal. Now, if you're meeting with a deaf person, speak to them directly. Hello, how are you? Are you doing well? I'm happy you're here. That is speaking directly to a deaf person. You might pause at the very beginning of your interaction to check in with everyone, including the interpreter, to make sure that everyone's setting is good. That's the pause and check in. It's important to consider the contrast of your shirt and your background. We're wearing black to make sure that everyone is able to see us clearly.
Russ speaking. Okay, what's next? The in-person don'ts. Number one, my pet peeve, and this happens to me often, 33 years plus, going to the doctor. Nurses and doctors will say this: tell him, tell them, tell her, tell him, tell them. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm right here in the room with you. Why don't you talk to me? Right? And I do say that in a nice way. I'll ask really politely, would you mind speaking directly to me? And after that, it doesn't seem like the doctors understand what I did. So then what I do is I start telling the interpreter, tell him, tell them, tell him, tell them. The doctor gets really confused. And then I say to the doctor, now you understand what I mean, don't you? So it's time to change that. Stop saying those things. Don't tell them, just talk to us. And then that's when we have an interpreter, don't slow down to where you talk like this and you say things like, my name is Bob. Don't do that. But at the same time, don't be a lightning buzz and be like, hi, my name is blah, blah, blah. Don't do that. Just be your true authentic self, be your normal self, because the more comfortable you are, the more comfortable everyone will be in any given situation. Another thing is don't ever avoid contact with a deaf person, right? I am gazing, I am looking at everyone. Without eye contact, I feel lost. And I have to ask myself, are you talking to me? Or are you looking at something else? Sometimes when people look away, I will try to track where they're looking. And I'm like, where are they looking? Turns out most people think and they look away when they do that. Deaf people are very visual, so we catch those cues when someone looks away for a thought, and it can be distracting. Another important part, and Tiffany, you mentioned this about having that interpreter stand behind someone's shoulder. Don't turn around and respond to the interpreter that might be standing behind you. And I know it might feel really awkward hearing sound come from behind your back or over your shoulder, but be focused on the deaf individual in front of you. Yes, sure. How are you doing? Don't do this. You see what I'm doing? I've seen some people lean all the way back. I've seen it all. Trust me. And then Tiffany mentioned this. I like to repeat it. No light source behind you. We end up losing your facial expressions, and all we see is a dark silhouette. And for the deaf community, we're very reliant on facial expressions. You see my mouth, my nose, my eyebrows, everything moves. And I want to see that on you when it moves. I don't want to see a shadow of a person, right? Then it feels literally like I'm talking to a wall. Next slide.
Yeah, that's right, Russ. All right, we have 10 minutes left. I'm going to talk about audio supremacy. And then we've talked about the do's and don'ts. And Americans, we always want solutions. But I want to, share this problem of audio supremacy in the Zoom room. Russ mentioned the recording, for example, will record the audio speaker. So while Russ is signing and is not making any sounds, the Zoom will record the sign language interpreters. So I've got a video for you to watch. I don't know if you know this game.
All right.
So in the chat, I would like everyone to share your thoughts. So you saw Steve Harvey, the host of the game. We've got a hearing person and a deaf person with an interpreter, which is important. The deaf person on the right had access. And Steve is also hearing. So he voiced the question. 100 people we surveyed. How many deaf people? But who answered the question? Who's going to answer the question? Go ahead and share your thoughts in the chat. Who's going to answer the spoken question by Steve Harvey? The person who could hear Steve Harvey asking the question, right? So you're right, but why? You guys are getting there, that's right. The person who heard it will hear it faster. And why? We mentioned that before. We touched on this before. I'm wondering if you can understand the why. This is because of the lag time. There's an interpreter off screen interpreting the question. There you go. Very good. You got it, Allison and Tiffany. So what if we move the interpreter to the other side? And Steve is deaf and signing the question. And the interpreter will then voice to the hearing person. What if Steve signed 100 people? We surveyed 100 people. Who's going to answer the question first? Go ahead and put it in the chat. Right, the deaf person is fastest. Obviously, why obviously? Why is that so obvious? Again, there's lag time. So the interpreters, remember, this is not English to English. It is English to ASL or ASL to English. So there is a lag time to sort of formulate the conversation in the second language. Now, if Steve were to sign the question and the hearing person knew sign language, then we wouldn't even need the interpreter. Sorry, interpreter, we won't need you. We'll put you to the signs side. And Steve signs the question. We surveyed 100 people. How many people? How many deaf people? Now, who's going to answer the question if the question was how many deaf people will? Maybe you're not sure out there. So Family Feud, what are they famous for? If we're all signing with no interpreter, who will hit the button first? Any guesses out there? Go ahead and guess. Samantha, the fastest person. Very good. That is called inclusivity. That is equal access. So again, when we talk about train the trainer, having a deaf person learn the material and then share that to a deaf audience, that is the same concept. Full, inclusive, and equal access.
Russ speaking. Okay, next slide. Here we are, the perils of speaking. For a deaf person, we speak. Many hearing people don't realize that deaf individuals speak. Not all deaf individuals use their voice. I stopped speaking, and I'll tell you why, because of a different story. I've got my wife who's also deaf. My wife does not use her voice at all. I do speak, but she doesn't. The second I open up my mouth to enunciate, guess who the hearing person is going to talk back to first, myself or my wife? Immediately, they will speak to me. Immediately. Because all they see is or hear, you speak, okay, you can hear just like me. But they don't realize that I don't hear and I don't understand them. I can speak one way and you can respond in different communication modes. You can respond to me in different ways, not using audio. So I stopped using my voice. I stopped doing that. So I could have equity with my wife. I'll tell you another story. I used to own a restaurant in San Francisco, and the entire team was 100% deaf, all my staff. Even though we had people who spoke. We had a huge situation, and I've got lots of examples, but I'll just give you one of them. We had a person come to a table, and that person spoke well, right? And they were speaking, and they were able to track what the person's ordering on the menu, because usually they just point to the menu. And then after that, they would put down the order. And then the person has to walk. Remember, she went up to the table and spoke, and they would walk away. But then the customers, seeing the waiters walk away, would now holler at that person that could speak. And they'd say, hey, hey, hey. And then customers had to get up and follow the waiters to the back of the house. And they're getting angrier and angrier, and they're getting louder and louder because they think the server is ignoring them, and they think they're getting bad customer service, but they hadn't realized that that particular server or waiter was deaf themselves. So using voice was causing confusion. So we stopped. All the employees that were deaf, some could just use their voice, but we decided to choose a single mode of communication, meaning that the hearing customers would be responding to us in the same modality. And so you'll see some hearing people sometimes say, oh, wow, those particular deaf people can speak so well. Yay for their voice. But that's offensive to the deaf community. We take it the other way. It's not something to be proud of. Keep in mind to never ask anyone deaf to speak, to use their voice. Don't do that. Let the person decide for themselves their preferred method of communication. Okay, next.
That's right, Russ. So cognitive overhead. So we just mentioned something, you know, if you have a blurry background or if people are moving around and we're distracted by a lot of movement, that's very overwhelming. So if you're talking about full access and to reduce the overhead, you want the content to be easily accessible. you want people to know that content, they will have access to the content and they don't have to fight for it. Now, each person has their own learning curve. And we need to accommodate for that best we can.
This is Russ speaking. We're almost there, folks. We have 3 more slides. Auto captions are not the best, just so you all are aware of that. And auto captions can be offensive. You'd be shocked at some of the terms that show up. Sometimes people are saying something and it shows up as a dirty word, like even someone's name, like for example, Jacqueline might be spelled very differently. And so as a deaf attendee, we would look at that caption and be like, what kind of name is that? And then we're scanning the participant list to see where that person is. And then we're wondering, how could this name be in the captions, but not in the participant list? And now we're really distracted in those thoughts instead of just attending a simple conference like this, where we're able to take in information, have some takeaways and leave. Instead, we're distracted by the captions, who this person that is speaking is. So yeah, hire live a captionist. Yeah, I have noticed that auto caption services, automatic speech to text are not the best. And for the best output of services, you should be checking in, debriefing with your captioner before the meeting. They should know the subject, the title, the names of the presenters. They should be comfortable with all that information so that when they have to do the captioning, they're familiar with all the information and not just learning it for the first time. Now, I understand that finances come into play in that situation, but I want to ask you, what's more important, finances or the information you're sharing with your community? I'll let you think about that. If we can move forward. Okay, folks, take a read of the slide. And it says, ask. When in doubt, include us and ask us. I'd like to thank you again, NDI. I've been working with Nikki at NDI for over a year. And yes, we have been on a journey together. Some situations haven't been the greatest, but what I really love about Nikki is Nikki will pause things and hear from us. If we're in a meeting, Nikki will check in. Russ, we did this and that. How does this fit? How does it work? Thank you for incorporating us. I thank you for helping us know things better and knowing us better by including us, because in order to achieve something, we have to work together, not apart and not separately. We're stronger together. We work better together than we do apart. There's a lot of weakness when we divide ourselves. So let's work together. Thank you. Ask us. Next slide.
Right. As remember, Russ talked about the Golden Gate Bridge. We want that line of communication. We don't want to cross over a rope bridge that's unstable.
Right. And now we're open for QA, general QA. And I just want to tell everyone, no question is a stupid question. Ask away. My father always told me, ask no matter what, because you might not know something to begin with, and it's okay. We're all learning together. If you want to ask a question, we have 2 options for you today. One, use the raise hand feature, and we can spotlight you, and that allows us to see you and see your message, or you can type it into the chat. And you can also type it into the Q&A and we'll respond to it there.
I'm sorry to.
Caroline, are you going to join us as well?
For those who are raising their hands, please turn your video on. Thank you.
Ruth, do you want to do the raise hands first and I'll go through the chat box, and then we'll do both. So I'll ask you to see who's raising hands and get that underway.
Yes, please. Great. Thank you.
This is
Hello,
Russ.
and
Hello.
good afternoon. My name is Eugenio. I'm deaf and I'm in DC. I do have a question. So I know you two may not know about interpreter issues, but let's talk about the do's and the don'ts. As a consumer, I'm deaf blind. And if I go to a doctor's appointment and I'm sitting in the waiting room, I can see the interpreters there, but once the nurse comes in and says, follow me, I go ahead and follow them. But it's awkward because often when we're following the interpreter, the interpreter walks in front of me instead of behind me. And I want to see, no, the interpreter walks behind me and I want them to walk in front of me. Often the interpreter is trying to be polite and says, go ahead, you first. But I would like the interpreter to walk in front of me so I can see them in case the nurse is talking.
Tiffany, why don't you respond to that first?
This is Tiffany. Yes, first of all, I'd like to say I appreciate all of the comments that you posted in the chat. I want everybody to take a look at all of those comments because there are a lot of great ones. And this person is a deafblind person, so that's a great perspective. This is a perfect example of having to ask a person for their preference. So Eugenio, thank you so much for sharing that with us.
This is Russ speaking. Eugenio, you're right. Each individual has a unique need. The interpreter needs to accommodate those needs or deaf-blind needs because that is the interpreter's client. That is their client. Same thing for me. I've been going to the doctor's office for 33 years and I hate that. I hate when the interpreter is so polite. They let me go first and they're behind me. It's like a tennis game, right? It's like the interpreter is on your left. No, they're on your right. And so I got to look to the doctor on the right, look to the interpreter on the left, and my neck's going back and forth. It doesn't work. I like to pause things, ask them both to stand together. I like to be comfortable. I take control of my situations. I would imagine, Eugenio, that you do the same thing. You've got to stop the situation and reset things so that they do fit you. And I think many people don't realize that deaf-blind individuals have different needs. They have a different process. There's a lot of layers. Sometimes people think that it's something easy, but no. And I don't mean to be disrespectful to the group, but I really want to be forthright. If you meet someone that is deaf-blind and you meet their needs, then you're meeting the needs of the entire population of the world. And that is an important thought to have. If I can meet the needs of the deaf-blind community, I'm meeting the needs of anyone else, and you can support almost any community. And that's coming to you from my perspective. More questions? Anyone, please.
While we're waiting to see if there's any more hands raised, I do have a couple in the chat. And first of all, just to echo Tiffany, we've had a wonderful conversation and people have shared their experiences, echoing a lot of what Tiffany and Russell have been sharing. So we really thank you for that. But we have a couple of specific questions. One is it best to ask people to turn off their cameras if they're not presenting? Is that best practice?
This is Tiffany. Well, Russ, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, let me ask, just related to what type of scenario? Large group like this, one-on-one session. My personal preference is using webinars. I use webinars. It's a platform where I don't have to see everyone in gallery mode, right? If you click gallery, you will see 88 people. I can't take all 88 in. And so what webinar does is it separates. It creates a stage with curtains, they're virtual, and then the audience is on one side in the virtual auditorium. It's the same kind of idea. And so it really depends on the meeting. You can have, if you turn off your light, and I shouldn't say light, I'm sorry. If you turn off your video cameras, what I meant to say, then in that case, we have to ask you to turn it back on for the spotlight. So there's a lot of extra time and a lot of overlap there. I would say that there's no perfect solution. And what is close to perfect is to provide as many accommodations that will take care of a majority of the issues as possible.
This is Tiffany. You're right, Russ. So many people, if there are many people are deaf who are watching, they'll want to watch Russ and myself signing. But now we've added the interpreters, we're adding the other speakers, so the video pane gets smaller. So you should spotlight only the speaker, only the signer. And remember, audio supremacy should not take over your screen. If it does, you won't see the interpreter. So if you spotlight, then the video panes will be large. The hearing people can use their hearing. visual deaf people can use the video screen, but sometimes, we do want to see everybody on video. I will sometimes go to gallery view, see how people are receiving our presentation, but it is distracting. So then I will go back to speaker view with the spotlit individuals. So it really depends on the context and everybody's needs. Is there another question out there, Caroline?
Yes, once more an observation, but you may have some thoughts on it. You were talking about asking around a person's favorite or preferred interpreter. And the comment was, we have a hard time finding interpreters in Central Illinois. So sometimes it feels like there's not really a choice. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Russ speaking. Central Illinois, I get it. Let me just ask, what type of event is the event? And can that event be held on Zoom? If it can, then you could bring in interpreters from other regions. Just to let you know, us deaf people have seen more interpreters than you have in your entire lifetimes. I can guarantee you that. We have seen folks and we are familiar with some. And for that reason, virtual is a great solution for some rural areas. In big cities, it should be easier. However, the irony is with big cities, those interpreters get used the most because they're in higher demand. So there's pros and cons. The best response, I'd say, is to give yourself a large lead time. Ask way in advance. Ask for the interpreters that your client wants. If you're asking in short term with a little amount of time, people are stuck. You're going to have to try your best to get a qualified or competent interpreter for that. More questions, anyone?
Yep, there's another one. I had to be, there's so much great chat. It's sort of trying to find specific questions, but one here is, as a means of communicating with late deafened individuals who do not sign, what do you feel about the use of Google Live Transcribe in person one-to-one?
Tiffany, this is Russ. Go ahead, Tiffany.
Yeah, you have to ask. I'm not an expert with late deafened people. You would have to ask this person, how would you prefer to communicate? They're experts. So maybe they'd be okay with a live transcript, or maybe they prefer writing back and forth. Or maybe they're oral and they'll read your lips.
Russ speaking. For some of you folks, that translation, live transcribe might work. That's fine. In my family, we're deaf. My kids can hear, but we are very deaf. And what we use is Cardzilla.
Ooh, I love that. My favorite.
Yeah, well, hold on. Let me open it up on my phone. Give me just a second. Here we go. Here we go. There it is. Oh, no. Here, closed out. Give me a second again.
Tiffany's showing it, trying to show it.
Yeah, here we go. Now, what's really neat about this, give me a second, Tiffany. What's really neat about this, right? You can click on here, turn on the microphone, and look, I'll talk into it. Whew, my voice came out fine today. What's fine about this is Cardzilla, is that to erase it, you see what I did? I just shook my phone and it disappeared. How many times do people have to hit delete in a conversation, right? You don't have to do that here. You shake it. That's the best about this. What else is that it forgets what you said. Oh, it doesn't forget what you said. It goes back and there's a history. More and more deaf people are using this for one-on-one meetings, which is nice. However, you still have to hold up a phone, right? Personally, I don't like giving my phone to someone else. I will hold it up for them to speak to. I'll read it and then respond. That's how I use it. Yeah.
This is Tiffany signing. So somebody asked in the audience, Cardzilla is created by deaf people. It's Cardizilla. Somebody put it in the chat. Yeah, that's it, Cardzilla. It's a wonderful app.
Thank you. Yes, I had some questions about how you spelt it, and that's now been answered. Another question, again, going back to using interpreters in Zoom from different states. Someone has asked, I thought that an interpreter had to be qualified to work in a given state. Is that not true for virtual?
This is Russ. Tiffany, do you want to respond to that?
No, go
Okay,
ahead.
I will. This is Russ speaking. I was once in the interpreter industry. A lot has changed. Each state has requirements. All right. Some states do have certification requirements, credentialing requirements. There are national or nationwide certifications that exist. Now, I'm not an expert in the area, but I'll try to speak to it. Unfortunately, some states don't require certification or credentialing. Again, it really depends. I promise you, if I ask both the interpreters now, if I just ask them, now I won't ask them because they're working and actively interpreting at the moment. But if I ask them, wait, what was I thinking of asking? Give me a second, I lost my train of thought. I was about to say something. Tiffany, can you remind me what I just said?
Do states require certification?
Thank you for that. For certified interpreters, being certified doesn't mean an interpreter is the best. And in my humble opinion, I'm just being really honest. Certification helps. It shows that an interpreter is familiar with code of ethics, that they're familiar with the interpretation process. But I know some non-certified interpreters that grew up children of deaf adults that are amazing interpreters. And again, everyone has a different perspective. I want a specific interpreter that's going to fit into my needs. So again, every individual will have their unique desires. I prefer working with certified interpreters, but then again, some people don't really care about that. However, and really I want to emphasize this, the deaf consumer is the one who should make the decision on using a certified or non-certified interpreter. It should not be anyone in the hearing part of the interaction that makes that decision. And a lot of the times the thought process is, let's hire the cheapest interpreter. Hey, look, we've got access for you via this sign language interpreter. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. I went to the courthouse for a particular situation. My wife got a ticket, right? This is way back, way back. My wife got a ticket. And of course, I hopped in and went with my wife. I was sitting on the side of her. They called her into court. There was zero interpreters, no interpreters in the courthouse. Do you know what the judge did? Just started speaking away. Does anyone know sign language? Asking the room in general. We had one person raise their hand with a shy, timid smile. They walked up to the front. This is how they signed. I think little sign. I was so pissed off. I was so pissed off. I thought, you can't even talk to my wife. So then I tried to speak. I tried to talk. Then the judge shut me up. They told me to sit down and be quiet. And then I thought to myself, my goodness, my wife doesn't have a voice. And then they enforced that non-interpreter, who wasn't an interpreter, they forced that person to sign for my wife. And I said, no, you can't do this. That's not a certified interpreter. We're in a courthouse. This type of situation happens on a daily basis all over the world, right? And this is a minimal situation. There are other people that are experiencing different types of impacts to their life situations. And boy, I could talk on this topic all day long, but let's stick to what we're here for.
You've got a lot of exclamations in the chat box. Go, oh my goodness.
This is Tiffany here. You know, that's another example of audio supremacy. So thank you for sharing that, Russ.
And then just a couple more. We've got another Zoom question. What is the best view to select in a Zoom webinar that will capture all speakers and the ASL interpreter in the recording? At my organization, we have found success in recording to the local computer rather than the cloud, but I would like to know what you suggest in terms of the view setup.
This is Tiffany. The ideal setup is speaker view. Now, if there's a deaf speaker, just spotlight them and put them and record the speaker view. Those people who need audio the audio will be recorded regardless. If someone starts speaking and the interpreter has to sign, then you spotlight the interpreter. And then take the interpreter off spotlight when there's no other speaker. So, Caroline, you're handling the spotlight. Then we can ideally you have somebody in the background spotlighting the people that need to be shown, whether the interpreter or the deaf signer. Russ, anything to add?
Nope, you're good. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to stop there a moment and see if anybody wants to come on camera and ask a question in ASL that hasn't had the chance yet.
All right, we've got one moment, please. Can we spotlight Allie? All right.
This is
Hi,
Russ. Go ahead, Allie.
I work for vocational rehabilitation and have a lot of deaf coworkers, and I'm trying to get more involved within our deaf community here in Colorado. And I'm wondering really, what is the best way to include my deaf coworkers in this process? Because it's not something I want to take over as a hearing individual, but really involve our deaf community that's already employed with us and make sure we bring them into the process as well.
This is Russ speaking. Ali, instead of asking them to participate, why don't you go to where they are, right? Come up to them and say, I'm here. How can we work together? And it's important to have that mindset and how we frame ourselves, right? You can approach them and say, I need your input for this issue. By including them up front at the beginning, you'll get a lot of traction. And also another question I have for you is, how passionate are you? And I don't mean you specifically, Ali, I'm talking about that understood you, right? Some people are associated to the deaf community for financial reasons, right? And they're like, okay, things are good, I made some money. But if it's someone that's in your circle of influence, right? You want their support, you want their inclusion, and you want to be able to give that back to them. If it's a one-time deal, it might not be as successful as being fully involved and fully engaged. I saw a question about signing, and I'm going off tangent here, but the person said, I know a little bit of sign. I'm going to tell you the secret for learning sign the best. Keep talking to those deaf people. That's what'll help you learn sign language. If you stop signing, you lose it, right? Reach out, ask away to the deaf community by using sign. Deaf people have no problems with mistakes when people make signing. What we have a problem with is lack of effort, right? If someone shows that there's no effort, they're showing us that we're not important. But if you're showing effort, you're showing passion, if in your business you show that you care about every single individual, then yes, you will have a successful group.
This is Tiffany. I'd love to add to that. There are some people who are honestly tired of explaining and telling people. Remember I talked about the maze with the mice? There's not a lot of trust out there. So stay positive, stay connected, reach out to various people, and one of them will say, hey, she's serious. They'll take you seriously. So just keep your effort up there, keep your passion out. Does that answer your question? Perfect. Thank you for
This is
signing
Russ.
up.
Thank you so much. I want to add one more thing. I don't know if you noticed, Tiffany and I, before we start speaking, we identify ourselves. That allows people to hear and know who's speaking. So I would encourage everyone here in the Zoom. Of course, we're going to use spotlight features, but at the same time, state who you are, identify yourself. This is Russ speaking. This is Tiffany speaking. That way we know who it is that's speaking, and that also lets the interpreter key us in as well, right? Maybe it's Bob or another name that sounds similar to Bob. I have no idea, I'm deaf, but that could be the case where that happens, and that will help us identify the person. There's a lot of time that hearing people ask us, hey, did you hear that sound? And I have to respond very plainly, no, I'm deaf. And then they forget that we're deaf. I think hearing people believe everyone can hear, right? We don't hear, we use our eyes. We're very visual. We're very in tune with any visual motion. So I'd like to ask sometimes people, hey, I know I can tell, but I like to ask people, can you tell if someone's deaf or hearing? And the reason I can tell is by body language, the way they move. You can see it in their face. You can see the way their eyes gaze and move around if they're lost at an airport, right? They start looking around because they're lost. And so immediately I can tell when someone's deaf or hearing. And then plus we know ourselves very well. And I say ourselves from the movie X-Men. Not sure if anyone remembers the X-Men movie. I feel the deaf community is like the X-Men community. We have a huge amount of diversity and strengths within our group. We have some people that are more somatic, they have to touch, more kinetic, they have to feel things, right? Some who are more visual, they see things. Regardless, we have a large, beautiful family.
This is Tiffany. I see a raised hand out there. Come on up. One person, 1 minute. Okay, your spotlight now. Go ahead. I'm sorry to have a second question here.
You're okay. You're okay.
Here. When you talk about the airport, wow, it is not accessible to the deaf community. We're always looking around because we're worried our flight is going to change. The service agent, they communicate through a speaker system. There's no captioning. So I would love to talk about the National Disability Institute. Is there any way to talk to the FAA and improve the airport situation? I know it's not going to happen overnight, but we need to change that. Is there anyone there at NDI or someone to talk to about improving the experience at the airport?
For us speaking, this is probably a Nikki or Caroline question.
No answer?
Caroline.
Oh, well, I'll just
Would you have
come
a
off
reason?
mute. Sorry, this is Nikki. I've got background noise. I don't know how much, oh, sorry, start my video. See, I'm messing up already.
This is Tiffany. Let us
Can
get you on the spotlight.
Yeah, I
Nikki,
know.
just a
I
second.
know. I wasn't
Okay.
planning on being on camera, so I wasn't prepared for that today. I don't know how much control we have over the FCC, but that is certainly a great comment. And we do a lot of activism on behalf of the disability community. So it's certainly something that I can take to leadership and find out, does anybody have any connections? Who would we even, talk to about that? So not sure that we have any power to change anything, but it certainly is a great suggestion. And I will definitely take it to NDI leadership and see if there's any way. And if anybody listening knows anyone or any sort of road in there. Oh, Russ is saying, yeah, okay. So it looks like Russ and I are going to chat later. No. Oh, okay.
I would just like to add something, Nikki.
Yeah.
We need allyship. Many of you here involved in this webinar have now a knowledge. So if you know people who know people, talk to them, push them, encourage them. We need more people like you. I have been screaming off the top of mountains and it falls on deaf ears, right? It doesn't work for me. I got another story to tell real quick. I fly often. I'm in airports. I travel a lot. I have flown all my life. I've been deaf all my life too. Until with my own son, again, that incidental learning, hearing people learn in a different way. I do not like turbulence at all. Don't give me any turbulence. I freak out. My heart starts skipping and it feels like it's in my throat and my mouth almost. My son, 9 years old, this is when that happened 12 years ago. You know what my son did? As a 9-year-old, my son was holding this old guy's hand. My son was taking care of me. It was the other way around. My son was tapping me and my son signed like this. My son said, Dad, and he pointed to the ceiling of the airplane. He said, Dad, up there, there's a speaker. And they said, we're going to have 7 minutes of turbulence. I was shocked. I asked my son, wait, what? What? You said someone came on a speaker and they told you this? My son says, yes. They told you we're going to have 7 minutes of turbulence. My son said, yes, Daddy. I was so pissed off. Now, I know this doesn't happen all the time, but I know that there's communication. But if I had access to that information, that would have settled me down. I saw hearing people with their earphones on, their glasses up, leaning back in the chair, relaxed. I'm sitting there with a heart attack. What's going on? What's going on with the airplane? I'm thinking of all the potential things that could happen. We're going to crash. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Person right next to me heard the announcement. They have access to the information and they're at peace. So if I had access to that information, I'd have been on par. I'd have equal communication and then I would be just as relaxed as they were. So please reach out to me. If you want more information, I'm happy to give more workshops. Reach out to NDI. I'm happy to share on this. Connect with us, ask us, because we do want access to that information so we can be on par.